Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Talking fast. There's a lot of stuff to do here. I'm doing this in conjunction, not necessarily in conjunction, but part of the Garden State Film Festival, which is coming up in a couple of days. I love doing this stuff. I love film. I love everything about film. I love the music of film. I love the imagination. I love everything, as you all know. Casablanca changed my life, and I am particularly. We've actually, Remi Gangarossa, Jason Pelsey, we've been actually kind of shooting the breeze here for a little bit and discovering massive amounts of commonality and synchronicity in the universe. And talking to Jason about being a composer and music. They have their film, Marilyn's Paradise. I want to hold it up here, which is and Jason also, I have to say, best composition for short film that he won that for the Garden State Film Festival. So this is
Jason, woo!
awful stuff, and all the synchronicities and the energies here. And we were drifting off to the Godfather for a little bit, and Back to the Future a little bit, and time travel, which is an element of Marilyn's Dark Paradise. That's Marilyn Monroe. And my original thoughts, what I said to Remy and Jason is powerful film, powerful thought, powerful idea, and the notion of time travel and everything. It's provocative and haunting, which it should be. So I'm really thrilled, and I have to control myself because I start shaking because of glee and the stuff that we want to talk about. So anyway, my I call this a Johnny Carson monologue. It really wasn't funny. Um, by the way, I told this to somebody I interviewed, a young filmmaker this afternoon. I said, "Yeah, this is my Johnny Carson monologue." She said, "Who?"
Oh no. Maybe
The
we should give her
Guns.
the time machine so that she can go
The
see some Johnny
Guns.
Carson.
And you know what? I just dropped it at that, and I just left it alone. And then I kind of realized my age, and it is what it is. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves, do a little background, Remy and Jason, take it away.
Sure, I'm Remi Gangarossa. My name is spelled Remi, R-E-M-I, but it's pronounced Remi, like do re mi. I was named after the Sound of Music, so you could sing the song if you want. But if that's how you want to remember do re mi, drop the do, Remi. And I don't know what I'm. This is the Italian coming out of me with all my hand movements here. All right, Jason.
My name is Jason Pelsey, and I am the composer for the film Marilyn's Dark Paradise.
Okay, perfect. So maybe I was saying your name wrong. I didn't
That's
know.
okay. Did I even say what I did on the film? So I'm the director and creator of the film.
Thank you.
Woo. I mean, we
Thank
had
you.
just such a great conversation before we went live. I'm
No,
all amped up. I can't remember what we talked about before, but we haven't talked about yet. So
I
it's going to
know.
be a little interesting, ladies and gentlemen.
We should.
Jason's like, what did I get myself into?
Oh, look at the time.
Yeah. Well, I love looking at you got daylight coming through your blinds there,
I
and
do, yeah.
you're here not. That
No.
that's LA. So, Rami, I'm saying it right now.
Mhm.
Let's start. We're going to kind of bounce around. Um, how did the journey of creating a time travel film about Marilyn Monroe, which is powerful, first come together for you? Powerful stuff.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'd always been a big lover of movies my whole life. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. I went to school out in Los Angeles. That wasn't by accident. So I wanted to surround myself around Hollywood if I could because of my love for entertainment and film. And so I was in the heart of it when I went to school out there. And while I was out there, because I wasn't really in the industry, it's one of those fake it till you make it scenarios. So what I was able to do was actually spend a lot of my youth sneaking into Oscar parties and Grammy parties and the actual Oscars. And I did that for the good part of a decade. And, during that time, I said to myself, if I was ever going to do something myself, what would it be? And I've always been obsessed with time travel. I mean, look at me here, guy. Back to the Future 2 hat, which is screen accurate, by the way. There aren't a lot of screen accurate hats.
Wow.
This is one of them. Okay. And so I had started writing a script for a time travel short film, and decade went by and I still had yet to do anything about it. And unfortunately, which is actually, we were talking about parallels earlier. My brother Tony, of all places, was in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and he got hit by a drunk driver out there. And luckily, he survived that tragedy. But he got hit by a drunk driver and he was in a coma for a little bit of time. And to take my mind off of what was going on, I said to myself, what's interesting? I tell my friends know me as this guy who's from Buffalo, who went to school in Los Angeles and lives in Chicago, and he's this Hollywood guy. But I had never really seen a Marilyn Monroe film. And it just so happens at that time, when Tony was in the hospital, the 7 Year Itch was on a Netflix. So I said, I can't go through my whole life not seeing a Marilyn film and telling people all these stories about Hollywood. And so I watched that film. And for the first time in my life, I had never, ever had an experience like this. When Marilyn first comes onto the screen, right? She's holding this bag of groceries and she kind of stumbles through her front door and they got the camera on her. It was like a feeling I had never had before in my life from no man, no woman, no human, no anything. There was like this sixth sense energy that was like coming out of the screen. And I said to myself, oh my. And it was more than her beauty. There was something else that was present that wasn't visible on the screen, but that still emanated through the TV. And I said, oh, I get it now. She's not just this commoditized idea where she's on little trinkets and she's all over Hollywood and on billboards. There's something different with this human being. And so while Tony was still in his coma, I started studying up on Marilyn and studying up on her story. When Tony came out of the coma, I told him this realization I had that I had been doing all these things in Hollywood, but then there's this Marilyn Monroe experience that I had. And he looked at me and he said, Rami, you have been talking about making a film forever. Either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And you have this time travel story that you've been making, and you have Marilyn Monroe. Maybe there's something there. And because of that, I was able to blend those two ideas and take what was just a theory and then turn it into something real. Now, it took 10 years to complete the film, but that's my story on how I got this time travel story in Maryland and how those two concepts came together.
Wow. By the way, that is like a film in itself. How this all came together.
I was
Think
thinking
about that. I'm sitting here listening. Wow.
Thank you.
We could talk about this whole. We will. So, Jason, Remy's mentioned you spent, and I can't process this, but then again, I spent 5 years doing what I did. You spent 5 years composing for this film, which is amazing. Well, during that time, and I'd love to know this, what helps to sustain you and the creative energy? That's a long time, and commitment during that 5 year period.
Well, I'll tell you what, it takes a special person to keep my attention for 5 years too. And Remi Gangarossa is one of those people that just drove me, but in the best, most positive way. And it was really inspiring. And anytime he'd send me a new scene and say, Jason, this is what I'm looking for. You're the only one that can do this. And I was like, oh man, flattery is off the rails. It's amazing. I love this. I can do this for 5 years. And I did. It was amazing. And I mean, that's A, but B, I love the concept of the movie and I love the way it was shot. And I loved working on it. It was cool because it was a period piece, but also kind of not a period piece because it's in our time and age, kind of, but then going back in time. And I loved it. And so I got to do a lot of research on Marilyn songs and music from that time period and kind of, I don't know, it was thrilling and fun. So to answer your question, it was this man right here, Remi Gangarossa. It was so inspiring. And then the music just flowed. I've worked with people where I'm like, no, I'm good after 2 weeks. We're
Wow.
good. I did your thing. Now we can move on. And Rami kept coming back to me and said, hey, I actually want to change this. And I was like, it's fine. Let's do it. No problem.
Wow.
So,
What commitment. Um, you mentioned, Remy, you saw 7 Year Itch. Is that when she's standing on that fire grating and her skirt goes up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
iconic Marilyn scene that's
Yeah.
embedded in the memories of the world. Some of those scenes are from the 7 years, including that scene.
Okay. Okay. Because there's a sculpture museum here, and it was built by Johnson from Johnson and Johnson,
Hmm.
the billionaire, and it's a sculpture museum. And actually, it's called the Grounds for Sculpture, and it's in Trenton, New Jersey. And there's a 60-foot statue replication of Marilyn's skirt
Oh, interesting.
from the movie, and I didn't do anything bad, but I kind of walked underneath. Uh,
Yeah,
well,
they had
you
that in
didn't look.
Chicago, and then I know that they've got the one in Palm Springs. So I didn't know about the one that's there in Jersey.
yeah,
I might have to check it out this week when we're there.
Yeah.
yeah, sure, sure, because I mean, I think it's probably open all year long. I mean, it's a wonderful museum, and it's really incredible. So there's a picture of me, underneath.
Looking up,
Sure. Yeah, well, there's nothing to see looking up, but
not looking up.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to cast that image of me. I just stood underneath it. But anyway, um, now getting serious a little bit, Remy. On the final days of production, you're really. Was this you or your brother? It was your
No,
brother.
so this is wild. Just some of
How
the
did that? How
parallels.
did that reshape? How did that reshape the relationship with your film and
Yeah.
the determination to finish it?
You're talking about my own drunk driving
Yeah,
situation,
that
right?
was you.
So
So
at the beginning of the film in 2016, that situation happened to my brother where he got hit by a drunk driver. And then with me,
yeah,
right after I had just finalized the film, basically the final elements of the film, and I was out in Los Angeles, with a colleague of mine, something unrelated to this. We were in an Uber, and then we got hit by a drunk driver that also almost killed us. And it's interesting how this film is bookended by both of these very similar scenarios, similar in that my brother survived it in circumstances that most people wouldn't. And my friend and I also survived it in a situation where if you were to look at that car, which Jason actually was able to come, after that had happened because I called him to the scene to see that car. Most people would not come out of a scenario like that. And I think that, if I had a guardian angel, it's definitely Marilyn. And this theme of resilience. And even if you have all the odds stacked up against you, being able to come out of situations that most of the time people wouldn't because they have the grit, they have the energy, the passion, and I drew a lot of inspiration that through the 10-year period working on this from Maryland. And I think it's really interesting that at the time I needed someone the most, she was there for me in this circumstance when I finished the film. So it reshaped the film because it gave me, I'm the editor of the film, right? So in having the film fully shot at that point, when I edited the film, it reshaped how I put the film together, which was very interesting because I had a certain way I had it edited before this circumstance. And then the way I edited it in the arrangements of different scenes was different after I survived this accident. So yeah, it's very you used up a word powerful,
yeah.
powerful stuff, and I have to thank my hero, my guardian angel, Marilyn.
Mm.
And I know all about guardian angels. And make no mistake that it, it it's alive and well, and it does. I wrote a book about guardian angels, and it's powerful stuff. And believe that. By the way, I wasn't processing. I know you told a story about your brother. and in looking at my notes because we just met. I thought that was him, but then maybe it's not. So there are two. So that's powerful.
If you see some bruising too here, I had to have, so I've had like 12 to 15 surgeries last year. After that, and some of it was on my face, but the most recent one I had was this month. It was the most invasive of all of them. But if it looks like I haven't slept, it's I haven't slept,
You
but it's
probably have
mostly
it.
because of the bruising from surgery. So if you're
Oof,
wondering what's going on here,
oof.
that's
Wasn't
what it
wondering.
is.
Not at all. Not at all. Um, Jason, so Marilyn Monroe lived a life filled with duality, which is a huge understatement. How do you, uh, just trying to get into the mind of a composer, you approach translating that complexity, because wow, was she complex, into music?
Mm.
I mean, I don't know if you don't, if it's a trade secret, then don't tell me, don't, but and we talked a little bit about my experience with the film and the composer and the majesty of what you guys do.
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought of that question before. I think if I could correlate it to what we've been talking about with like your spirituality or the idea of a guardian angel, I get a lot of ideas in my dreams. Some of my best work, in my opinion, my best work, I have woken up from a dream, ran out to the piano, pressed record, and there it is. And Norma Jeane was one of those where I was dreaming about it, like what the heck am I going to do for this piece? It's such an important piece for the film. And I play piano for a living here in LA, and I played piano for for 38 years now. And so everything for me starts with the melody on the piano. And when I'm playing, or when I hear a melody and I'm translating it to the piano, I am thinking of all the other instruments at the same exact time. So my left hand is playing like the brass and the tubas and the cellos and the drums and all the things, and everything else is on the right. And so for this specific song, I woke up from a dream and ran out here and laid everything down on the piano, and then went through and changed everything to a full orchestra.
A dream. Hey, I buy that. I I buy that, and I'm so fascinated. I'm so listen. The cover of my novel I showed you, my
Yeah,
vision water thing. I jumped up at 4:44 in the morning. I don't know what I was doing before that.
yeah,
It was 4:44, a powerful number in my life. Anyway,
yeah,
and there I had that image in my head, so I know exactly
yeah,
what you're saying. And I came
yeah,
down here and I sketched. So wow,
yeah. And where does it come from? I mean, I know where it comes from for me,
sure,
so
sure,
I trust it, and I elaborate on it
yeah.
and let
I
it
don't know, it's
evolve.
wild. So Marilyn lived in New York City at her residence. Was at 444 East 57th Street.
Is that right?
So you said 444, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about New Jersey, New York, and
Oh, why are you filling my head with all this stuff, guys?
I had to
And
go
I
double
want
check
to
it
sleep
because
tonight. Was that right? That's where she lived, 444? Oh,
yeah, post accident, this is awful, but a lot of my Maryland memories, I lost them, and then I'm like, there's this, I know this, I should know this, and this was one where I was like, I'm pretty sure I had to double check it, but yeah,
so I feel redeemed that I help
Yeah.
elicit a memory, from
yeah.
you.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. I half my novels is about that number 444. Just it's powerful
Interesting.
stuff. Okay, back to
Actually, hold
you.
on, one more thing. I
Yeah.
have Marilyn's clock from that residence. So she had a clock that was in that residence that was in the Christie's auction. And I have that in my house downstairs. Maybe before the end of the call, I'll bring it up and show it to everyone.
It stopped working at 4:44.
No. It's set to 10:04. All
Okay.
clocks in my life are set to 10:04 because that's when the lightning struck the clock tower. And
True.
Back to the Future, 10:04 p.m. There's some cosmic significance to that. So it's set at 10:04.
Yeah, I met him. Met Doc
Christopher
Brown.
Lloyd?
I met Doc. Yeah, he was a couple of years ago at the Garden State Film Festival. I think prior to the pandemic, and there I was. What can Sometimes I get from Saturday Night Live. I get verklempt. I can't. When I'm around greatness, I kind of shut down a
You
little
know
bit.
what? I met him in Chicago. I was at the gym. This was when I had a period of time where I wasn't doing Hollywood stuff. So I was at the gym. I was at Export Fitness here in Chicago, in the Lincoln Park area. And I was about to leave, and they have this juice bar that's in the front. And so I'm walking towards the juice bar, and I literally see Christopher Lloyd sitting at the juice bar. And in my head, I'm like, why would Christopher Lloyd be in Chicago? But for only 1 second that happened. I was like, nope, boop. I just walked straight up to him. And I am not a starstruck guy, but Christopher Lloyd's my hero, right? He is my film hero, or Marilyn's more like my personal hero. Christopher Lloyd's my character hero. So I saw him sitting there and I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sure this has happened for decades. You are my hero. Can I take a photo with you? And he looks at me and he's like, why would you take a photo? Why wouldn't you take a video? And I was like, this is real. It's like, wait. So I started looking for my phone. I was like, I'm so sorry. I left my phone in my locker. Can I go and grab it? Will you still be here? He's like, I'm gonna wait for you. And then I ran downstairs and I'm like, oh, he's gonna leave. He's not gonna wait for me. So I went downstairs, I got my bag and I came up and he was still sitting there. And so then I pulled my phone out and then I started talking and I pointed the camera at him and he looks at me and he looks at the camera and he goes, Great Scott. And it's like, come on, you can't make this up. I had my childhood hero in
Wow,
Chicago make this video for me. So I have a very special thing in my heart for Mr. Christopher Lloyd.
wow, what a nice guy.
He's so sweet.
What
He
a
was,
nice
and by the
guy.
way, when I told him he was my hero, he started blushing. Like he's probably been hearing this his whole life. He's got so much humility and so humble. And when they say you really shouldn't meet your heroes, maybe I'm the outlier, but I am so happy that I met him.
By the way, I watch that film all the time. The scene, one of the scenes, everybody picks, a little, one of the great scenes for me is when he's first walking into town and he's by the gas station. Because I'm so old, I remember that stuff, which is like,
Mexico?
yeah, the Texaco and five guys come out to take care of the car,
Yeah.
and that's the way it was.
Yeah.
That wasn't really embellished a hell of a lot. I mean, you had five guys coming out to take care of the car, the air and checking under the hood, and I mean all this stuff. And that just it just moved me. Of course, I love when he went in. Do you have a tab? He said you didn't buy
Yeah.
anything yet. I mean, it just brilliant stuff. But so it fills me so much.
You know how I know I have to be on a diet? Because you said Five Guys, and then my stomach started grumbling because it made me think of the Five Guys
Oh,
hamburger joint.
oh,
I think I'm going on a diet this week, Jason. Just an
oh.
FYI.
Hey, I didn't mean it, but well, sure. Um, okay, back to work. So, and this is interesting. Remy, what kind of inspired you what made you do the decision to film in some of the same locations that Marilyn Monroe once stood? I mean, that's also, I keep saying powerful, but it's powerful.
So in my studies, right, I have not there I have a lot of friends of mine who are in the Maryland community that are real experts on Maryland. I have a friend who wrote, a biography on Maryland, a couple volume, few volume, I think it might be 4 or 5 volumes at this point, biography on Maryland. So people who really have taken the time to research her. And I think the common theme amongst all of these Maryland historians is that when people do a film about Maryland, they don't really get the details right. And I think that that is a product of Hollywood and that Hollywood being a machine and just trying to pump a story out. And for me, integrity around her story was very important. So when you see the film, you'll see that I didn't focus on what most Maryland films focus on, which is the pizzazz, the Marilyn Monroe. I really focus more on the human Marilyn, Norma Jeane. That is really the story I wanted to tell that was different. And in doing that, I really believe to get as close to the truth as possible, I had to make everything as accurate as possible. So, for example, recreating her bedroom, it took like 7 years of my life to get every single element in the right spot when we were filming the shots with her nightstand, getting all the pill bottles in the right spot with the pills in the right order and getting all those details right. Another part of that included where we were filming, and I really didn't want to do things on sound stages if I could avoid it. I wanted to go to the same spot. Could we be in the same spot that Marilyn once stood? What did she feel like in those environments? So, for example, when we filmed at the Misfits shots, we actually went to the Misfits flat um, where they filmed the Misfits, and my lead actress, Stephanie, who played Marilyn, stood in the same exact spot that Marilyn stood in, and where I had to put the camera, it was interesting being in there, the elements, watching the camera blow her all over the place and then blow the camera over. You really got to feel what it probably felt like when Marilyn was there. And that is not something you can recreate. That would be artificial. So I tried my hardest not to include artificial elements unless I absolutely had to, right? Which included some of the items that are in the film were actually items Marilyn owned. For example, the bedroom shots in the bedroom that she passed away in, the light that was on the wall that she had next to her door. For so long, I tried recreating that light, and eventually it came up for auction, right? So I was like, well, I'm just going to include the real light in the film. Some of the elements that are on the nightstand, like her ear stopples that are there, which is part of a whole story of trying to figure out what those were for a long time. When we finally figured out they were the ear stopples, those actually came up for auction. So I purchased those and I included those in the scene. So I tried my best not to have uh, artificial elements in the film in the places where I could control it. And it even ties into Jason, right? This music didn't exist when Marilyn was around, but how can we make the music really feel like Norma Jeane? I think it's interesting that of all the songs that Jason won for, the first one that he's won for the song for is actually for Norma Jeane. And I don't think that that is a surprise because this is really Norma Jeane in the film, not Marilyn. And when Jason and I worked together, it was all about making sure it felt as close to Marilyn, Norma Jeane, as possible. So when I picked the filming shots and the locations, including Niagara Falls, when we were filming and getting the falls blowing water into the camera, like those are just things you can't fake. And we wanted them to be real and have her stand in the same exact spots. And I think we pulled it off.
You did. You did.
Sorry, I get animated when I talk about this stuff.
Well, you should be. By the way, I'm overwhelmed because this is our first meeting. The detail with which you've put this all together, completely overwhelmed. I've been watching. I'm an old guy. I've been watching a lot of movies, and detail, 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 and in my octogenarian age, I appreciate more than ever before the detail
Thank
uh,
you.
that goes into when you notice it and you see it. Some things not, but some things, the detail. Of course, I always jumped into Casablanca because but I watched the detail. Even the way the shadows fall on a face,
Mhm.
the shadows in a scene, or even the sound of a screen door closing, and from here to eternity, it banging into an empty pool room, and Montgomery Clift is walking in. So what I'm trying to say is detail, 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 and I sometimes I think a lot of may be missing, but listening to you both, the detail.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wish my color grader was here. He would tell you we've spent months on a 2 second shot. Months. Like when I say, people exaggerate, I'm not exaggerating. More than 40 hours a week for several months to get a 2 to 3 second shot correct. So when people are like, This is interesting because when I'm in some of these film festivals and there are these filmmakers who worked on the films and they've worked on them for a long time, when I explain this is my first film and they ask me how long I've worked on it, hear some people say, hey, I've worked on my film for a couple months or a couple years. When I say a decade, they all look at me like, what did you spend a decade on? A short film. If you make one short film for a decade, you're probably not making a lot of short films. But I refuse to get the details wrong. Listen, did I get every detail right? No, I'm never going to be able to recreate everything exactly. But can I tell you that whatever's within my power as a human being, did I try my hardest? And can I look myself in the face and say that I gave Marilyn my all to try and get the details as close as possible? I can proudly say this is my best work. I didn't take any shortcuts because she's so used to people taking shortcuts and she deserved better than that. So I believe that this is my best work. My only work, but this is my best work.
I don't know if you see me. I'm taking notes. I may be one of the only interviewers in America who takes notes, and I have to remember some of these key words that you're throwing out. They're so important to me and to things that I'll write up. Wow. I got to hope. By the way, I don't want to lay any guilt on you guys, but I got 2 pages of notes already. Thank you. Detail. You talk about detail, and I talk about detail too when I write a couple paragraphs up. Um, okay, moving to Jason. Film music often works subconsciously on the audience. Um, when you're scoring this and you're putting this together, are you putting in some things intentionally to
Yeah.
shape the viewer's emotionality?
Yeah, always. Yeah. Especially on a silent film where you don't have any help. And so for me, I mean, I'm sure other composers do the same thing I do, but something that I do is, like I was saying earlier, is when I hear all the different instruments on the piano with using my 10 fingers, I can hear and and correlate the music and what I'm hitting on the piano to the movement on the screen. So if there's a scene, I don't think we used this scene, but there's a scene where Norma Jeane goes like this, and her hand goes off to the right, and the music follows her movement. So for me, I'm also a perfectionist when it comes to this music, where I want, especially in a silent film, I want the music to be a character as well that's there with the other characters on the screen. And if they're going to the left or they drop something, the music has to help bring that out as a character as well, as a character as well. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
No, makes sense.
It makes
It
sense.
makes sense. Um, Remy, so I said this earlier, and of course I didn't remember where I saw it, but it's in my notes here. Marilyn's 100th birthday is approaching. How did that milestone birthday uh, influence your thinking about the film's release? Of course, there had to be something there.
So when I was at year seven, I would joke like at the rate I'm going, I'm not going to have this thing out in circulation until Marilyn's 100th birthday. And I would joke with my friends at that time, it was like 6 or 7 years, and they would laugh at me and they're like, yeah, honestly, that's probably what's going to happen. And so when I had the film completed, right, and I had everything in order at the end of 2024, or I thought I did, right? And then I got in the car accident and I thought, again, it was on December 21st, 2024. So I thought 2025 was really going to be the year I went all out on it. And then that slowed me down again. So I think the elements, for as grave as they were, caused the scenario where its real life is coming to life in 2026, in the year that she turns 100. I don't think that that is a circumstance. I think that this is its time and it deserves to come out when she turns 100.
Yeah.
Wow. By the way, I got to say something, a little off topic, kind of. You're talking about, Marilyn and stuff, because I'm spiritual. A bunch of years ago, I'm looking. Oh yeah, I want to show you something. A bunch of years ago, I was sitting here and I, did some writing and my, Vichy water was just got it out of my system. And then, because I'm spiritual, you channel Marilyn, and I, for whatever reason, channeled Albert Einstein.
Hmm.
Why? Because I had this picture of Albert's eyes behind my
Oh.
computer for a million years, and so one day, just like I'm talking to you guys, and when I talk to my spirits, it's just like I'm talking to you guys. I talk out loud. I make sure my wife is far away. She doesn't think I'm out losing my mind. I'm talking, myself. But anyway, I channeled Albert Einstein, and just like I'm talking to you now, I said, "Dear Albert, I get the feeling not too many people like channel you because you're gone and stuff, and I know you're there, and I marvel at your mind. I don't know how you conceived of relativity before Google and the internet. I can't process that." I said, "But I have no this is just how I'm talking to you guys. I'm just as exactly how I'm talking to Albert Einstein, and I'm saying because this relates to you. I mean, channeling Marilyn. So I said, listen, I have no desire whatsoever to know anything about relativity. I couldn't give a damn. But if you can send me some particles of energy, make me a better writer. That would be great. I don't know if you want to do that. Maybe you're not busy up there, whatever. But I'm channeling you, and you know what? You can hook me up to a lie detector test. Weeks after that, I'll swear that my writing just jumped up. My book got 10 awards nationally, and it was the channeling. So I'm saying to you, Remy, the stuff with Marilyn. mm, there's things beyond, you
Yeah,
know?
I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to think of it like some sort of seance, but I think that there are echoes of her presence being on Earth that still exist, that reverberate through time, and finding a way to capture that, which is actually another reason why I felt like being in the same spots was important. Because again, if time has echoes, the echoes of Marilyn being in those moments, they're there. How do you just bring them into the film? And yeah, and I've just been, if anything, I've been fortunate enough that if she really is a guardian angel for me, it's nothing that I'm doing. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just so fortunate. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Hey, listen, stuff works. We don't have a lot of comprehension about that stuff, but hey, stuff works. Um, Jason, how do you try to let Marilyn's voice and spirit come through in that piece, which won that award?
Hmm. Man, I
Hard,
am,
hard.
yeah,
It's hard.
yeah. I think that the idea for the music came maybe not from Marilyn, but from somebody or somewhere else that understood Marilyn, and I was given the idea, and the idea came through me, and then I composed it. I can tell you that on Earth, I looked at you know film of Marilyn and that kind of stuff, and got inspired as much as I possibly could. But again, to go back to what we said earlier, what I said earlier was I woke up with it. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a divine intervention
Oh,
that
sure.
came through, and I was like, wow, okay, that's it, done,
Okay.
great.
Okay. Uh, I'm going to ask this question, or it's off topic. It's one of my favorite questions. I plagiarized it from Barbara Walters, so be it. She's great, great lady, great journalist. Uh, so and actually, I probably know. Gosh, I'm thinking to myself, I probably know the answer already. At least one of you guys, anyway. So here's the question, and it could be a couple answers. There's no rules here. So excluding family or friends, somebody living and dead you'd like to spend a day with. Both of you can think about that.
Easy.
Of course, it's easy. Duh. Shouldn't have even asked it. Yeah, but there could be a couple, whatever.
I mean, I unfortunately mine is so obvious. So
Of
I don't
course,
even know if I need to say it.
it's a stupid question. I asked it anyway because
I mean, I'm
sometimes,
gonna say it, but I'm saying it and I'm like, oh, I am so cheesy. Of course it's Marilyn.
of
Of
course,
course for me it would be Marilyn.
of course.
Um, Jason?
I think a person that's no longer with us would be Victor Borga,
Wow,
one of
wow,
my absolute favorite
wow.
comedians
Piano,
in the world.
piano. Maybe the quintessential humorist pianist.
Of all
Combined them
time.
both.
Yep. And I do a lot of shows here in LA as a pianist, and I definitely plagiarize him a little bit. I'll do things where I'll be playing. I'll have 150 people standing around a piano with me, and I'll be playing, and I'll go down the keyboard, and I'll fly off the end of it and fall on the floor because I've gone too far, and people just get a kick out of it. I just watching Victor Borgo growing up. That is one of those people for me where I'm just like, I want to be that guy,
Yeah.
and he did it well into his older age. He did it when he was 65 plus 15.
It's funny. I don't think there's enough done and enough Victor Borges stuff floating
I
around.
agree. I
Uh,
agree.
there's several generations that have come around and don't know of that greatness
Yeah.
and who he was. And of course, my being an octogenarian, I know that stuff. I
Yeah.
grew up and marveled at him. Um, I got a couple more things here to throw at you guys. Uh, as we're stuck in time, I figured I'd throw that in. Stuck in time. Um, so the time traveling companion. I'm just throwing this out. It adds another layer uh, to the film. What does he represent thematically? And is it kind of literal or symbolic, the whole time travel thing? You're smiling.
I leave it up to the viewer. I think that it was written in a way where it can be interpreted both ways. Could be a literal time traveler, um, or it can be a metaphorical time traveler, which, again, if you're a Marilyn fan, everyone who, again, studies her, who really wants to understand her, who reads up on her, they have, through that, that's their mechanism to get close to her. And because this is film and you can do interesting with films, despite my obsession with time travel, I wasn't really, I know I started this by concocting some sort of time travel film, but it never went anywhere because I didn't care about time travel enough to make it real. But I did over time care about Marilyn enough to make this real. So the time travel is just a mechanism to get the people watching, the audience, closer to her. And I play the time traveler. So all I represent, if you were to look at it more thematically, is I'm everyone who's a Marilyn fan. Everyone who wishes that they could go back in time and maybe save her from that night. And again, one of the things I didn't focus on that night is conspiracy mumbo jumbo about the Kennedys and all of that stuff. Whether true or not true is irrelevant because when people do films and things about Marilyn, they like to focus on that because it sensationalizes it and it makes for good material. But in my film, I argue that's so irrelevant. Marilyn's story has so much material there. Why go and take the same old recycled garbage? Why not focus on what an incredible, amazing, uplifting human being there? Someone who is the symbol of resilience. Someone who, right, grew up not really having a relationship with her mother, not knowing who her father was, having this identity crisis of being put in an orphanage, even though she knew that she had a mother, right? And this idea of being an orphan, but not really being an orphan because she had a mom, which I think is really interesting because one of the parallels I have with my own family, and it's something I've really come to appreciate about Marilyn. My father had that same experience. So my father growing up in Sicily, even though he had a mother, he was put in an orphanage when he was a really young boy because his mother couldn't afford to keep him.
Wow.
And so when he was in the orphanage, he wasn't really an orphan like these other orphans who didn't know who their parents were, but he was in an orphanage. So he himself also has sort of had this identity crisis. And when he had the ability to come to the United States through this program, and fly across the country, my father had two lives. He had his life in Italy, where he had his mother in Italy, his blood mother, who he knew, who he had a relationship with, but then he had his adopted mother in the United States. And he had this fracture because when he would go to Italy, he would be Lillo. And when he would be in the United States, he would be Charlie. And that was very difficult for my dad. And it's something that makes me very emotional. But in going through this story, it's interesting because even some of the historians who talk about Marilyn, when she talks about how she was in the orphanage, right? Sometimes they chalk it up as though she was exaggerating and the orphanage wasn't as bad as maybe in some interviews she made it seem. But I think what they might be missing is this real identity crisis that she had when she was there, but she wasn't really an orphan. And the toll that that takes on a human, unless you go through it, you don't really know what that kind of pain is. And now I didn't go through it myself, but I vicariously understand it through my dad. And then seeing those parallels with Marilyn growing up in the orphanage and having this split on who she really is, you carry that for the rest of your life. That's not a thing that goes away. And I would argue the things that Marilyn would say in the interviews you would hear, it is not an exaggeration. She really had a tough time growing up, and in doing that, had all of the odds stacked against her in sexist 50s Hollywood, and somehow managed to arguably become the most famous human being that's ever existed in the world, right? Despite all of those circumstances. So, a lot of people who tell stories about Marilyn talk about Marilyn being a victim. I think Marilyn is a champion. I think Marilyn is someone who, despite everything, somehow gets through it. And that's the story I wanted to tell because that's her real story, not this other nonsense you see in some of these conspiracy things that exist.
Yeah.
And they just like to slap Marilyn's name on it because it sells.
Yeah. And,
I didn't make this movie to make money. I'm not going to make any money on this movie. And that's not why I created it. I created it because she deserved someone to really tell her story. And that's why this movie exists.
wow. Wow.
And that's why I needed the best composer in the world to do this, honestly, because you think about it, there's no dialogue in this. We have the language of Stephanie and Adeline's acting. And Stephanie is, when you see this film, you will think that this is Marilyn
By the
Monroe.
way, that was my next comment to you.
It's
What I
insane.
saw is, wow, does she look like Marilyn?
She really embodies her. I think if you would see Stephanie walking down the street in normal clothes, would you say she looks like Marilyn? No. But when like Marilyn turns Marilyn Monroe on, and when she turns it off, you wouldn't even know that that was Marilyn Monroe. I think Stephanie has that same ability to be able to do that, which is really one of the reasons, again, because the Marilyn fans are very, even the non-fans are very critical. If
Yeah.
you can't suspend reality and feel like that's Marilyn, you kind of lose the audience. So I didn't think that we could pull the dialogue off, which is why I didn't do it. And the dialogue changed from being dialogue into the music because I knew Jason could pull that off. I can't write a script that's going to really show the audience that this is Mara. Maybe Stephanie can embody her and speak like her, but I'm not a script writer, so it's not the thing that I can do. I know Jason could tell the story through his music, and that's why we don't have dialogue in the film. And we didn't need the dialogue. His music tells everything it needs to, and Stephanie's acting tells you everything you need to hear. And also, little young Norma Jeane with Adeline. She's great.
My last question,
Yeah.
which is kind of provocative and just absorbing you guys, and filling up my third page here, writing stuff down. If I like this question, if Marilyn could watch this film today, what do you think she'd say to both of you?
Hmm. I don't know I think that that's such a powerful question
Yeah, it
that
is.
if I gave you an answer on the spot, it probably wouldn't be accurate. And I don't want to just fling an answer at you just to fling an answer at you.
That's
You
fine.
know, I don't really know. If I could tell you what I'd be hopeful she would say, hopeful
Sure, sure,
is
sure.
thank you for taking the time on me. I hope she would say something like that.
Okay.
Now, would she say that? I don't know. But if she did, that would be the most rewarding thing. And maybe there are different ways that if Marilyn really is watching, right, that she can signal that to me. And, in some ways she did. She brought me, without this movie, I never would have met Rob, who was my cinematographer. Or excuse me, that's not true. I never would have met Jason, who I met through Rob. I never would have re-engaged with Rob on a film had it not been for this film. And I thank Marilyn for that in bringing Jason into my life and bringing Stephanie and bringing a lot of different people that are in the Maryland community into my life. And I think that might be her way of saying thank you to me if that was a thing. At least that's what I'd like to think. So she brought some amazing people into my orbit. And that's actually a thing that exists and again in the Maryland community. I talk about that a lot. That is a common thread that exists for people that are big Maryland fans, that they will say Maryland brought all of these great people around me. And so if anything, if she were to say thank you, that might be the thanks she's given me, a thing she's given me through this.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well said.
I would hope that she would say something along the lines of, "Thank you for portraying me the way that I feel as a powerful person instead of a victim, as a person that was able to conquer Hollywood." And because Hollywood's hard, but I can't even imagine being a woman back in Hollywood back in those
Oof,
days,
oof,
right? That'd be insane. And
oof.
I did another song with Remi. Remi asked me to do a piece, and I did it, and it was good. It was okay. It fit the scene. And then he came to me and he said, "No, this is the hero moment." And Marilyn Monroe most definitely was a hero. She still is to so many people.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, and I would hope that she would say something like, "Thank you so much for portraying me as a hero, not a victim."
For people who see the film, Jason's talking about the actor studio scene because my film is comprised of 7 acts. So one of the acts is Marilyn's time when she was in New York City in the actor studio, tackling this idea of, again, another reason she's so inspirational to be the most famous human being in the world at that time. You could just say, be complacent. I don't need to do anything else. I'm the best. And Marilyn never felt like she was the best. She always knew that she needed to be a better version of herself. So she put herself in circumstances where, again, all the odds were against her. People in the actor studio really didn't look at Hollywood very well. And then you have the epitome of what they would consider Hollywood coming into the actor studio. And who are you to be here in Lee Strasberg's class to learn this? So you think you belong here just because you're in Hollywood? And she put herself in that circumstance because she wanted to be better. And she knew that she wasn't the best version of herself. And, she had a moment when she was in the actor studio that we show in the film that, Jason will show you is kind of like that hero moment that she didn't let those circumstances get in the way of her trying to be her best self. And she had the humility to know that she still had a lot to learn, even though she had all the success that she did. And that, I think, is what really resonates with the Maryland fans, is that is who Marilyn is, not this victim. She's always just a victim and put it in the film because that's going to sell. And
Yeah.
Jason, I believe that's my favorite song of all Jason's song, her actor studio moment. So for anyone who takes the time to get to see the film at a film festival, when you see the actor studio moment, that's my favorite. That's my favorite act.
Okay.
It was also such a fun moment when Raimi when I finished that, and Rami flew out here to, I don't know if you just flew out here to listen to it, but you were here.
Yeah, I flew
And
out there to hear the song.
yeah, to hear the song because it needed to be heard on my system right here. Because this is where I recorded it, so it needed to be done here. It needed to be heard here. And I sat him down and I said, "Okay, you you asked for it." And I pressed play, and I'll never forget Rami. By the end of it, sorry, Rami, I'm gonna throw you under the bus, but Rami was in tears,
Yeah.
and it made I was in tears because I was like, I did it. And it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite things I've composed ever.
I think it was that couch that's right behind you. It's actually gonna make me tear up now.
Right, you were right here.
Yeah, for people who've seen it, who've seen the film, they tell me during that scene, I'm very proud of this, that it gives them goosebumps. And I think it's because it gets very close to probably how Marilyn felt in that moment, which I think is really cool. It's something I'm very, very happy that I did because that was one of the later acts that we did. That wasn't in my original script, and because it took so long, I said this has to be in the film, and so we put that together.
Yeah. How Marilyn
You might
felt.
have got a tear out of me, Jason. I'm sorry.
Well,
You can edit this part out.
I don't do any editing, guys.
Oh, okay.
No editing. And I, by the way, I could sense and feel your emotionality. You know, I've been watching. That's I'm a little intuitive that way. I can absolutely see it and feel it. And just a reminder, do send me that. I need to watch that
Okay.
tonight.
I will.
Tonight. I need to watch it probably again and again and again.
Thank you.
Because I'm going to write some of this stuff up because I like to. And uh, so, hey, this was great. My goodness, for so many reasons. You don't want it to end, and you don't want it to end. I don't want it to end, but it was fabulous meeting you guys. Hopefully, it'll be continued because any shape, way, form, I'm always around. I will promote and re-promote. And like I said, I live and thrive on loyalty. We're friends, we're friends. There's so many components and so many elements, the hat, and I mean everything.
And
So
your name Calvin, like Calvin Klein for Back to the Future.
yeah, correct.
You and I knew this was a match made in heaven.
Oh,
Like
I knew,
we
I
were
knew.
email.
I know, and the Godfather stuff, which I love, and it's such a part of my life, the Godfather, and I learned wonderful lessons about life. I learned about omerta, keep your mouth shut, and learned about taking care of your family, because a guy who don't take care of his family, a man who don't take care of his family is not a man.
Oh man, yeah.
Jason, remember that joke that you did before we started this? Let's pretend like it's the first time we heard it. Do you want to say it again?
Sorry, oh my gosh, which one was it? I had a few good bangers there.
Yeah, something about you tied it into an
Oh,
offer you
wait.
can't refuse. I don't remember the context, but I'm
Yeah,
just
if we do find a Remi Gangarossa in this world, and he does share your name, we're gonna give him an offer he can't refuse.
There you go.
Uh, Hey, that's it. Look, wonderful stuff. This is wonderful to be continued. I only wish you guys such good things always and always. And I'm going to stop recording, and we'll just do a minute or two wrap. I mean, really, just thank you. Hey, you did make my day for sure.
Same. Thank you, Kelvin.
Borrowing a line from Dirty Harry, you really did make my day, guys. Thank you. Don't leave. I'm just going to stop recording.